community where all people can access tools and opportunities to improve their quality of life, allowing them to reach their full potential. During its meetings, the Poulsbo City Council will use this lens to inclusively view its discussions and actions. And I'd like to call on Councilman Michael Fitzpatrick for the land acknowledgement, if you would, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Poulsbo is located on the ancestral lands of the indigenous Suquamish people, for whom this place was known as Tuk-Tuk Lots, or the land of the vine maples. Chief Seattle said in 1854, "Every part of this soil is sacred in the estimation of my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain and grove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in days long vanished."
Thank you, Councilman Fitzpatrick. Now, if you can, would you join me in the City Council and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think all the blinds are closed, so we won't be tempted to run outside and enjoy the early spring weather. But I did hear this afternoon, I'll share with everyone, that the West all the way to the Rockies is at 30% of normal moisture already. And so that's quite startling. When you see the weather out there today, you'll understand. The agenda is before you. There are copies in the back of the room. I'm not going to go through it. It's been posted. I will say, though, and if you would please note, we will have an executive session at the very end of the agenda. It will be an executive session regarding acquisition of real estate, and the City Council will adjourn from there, but we'll have continued public comment before that. So the agenda stands as presented, and unless there's a question, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to approve it.
Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as presented. Second.
I have a motion to approve the agenda and a second. We'll go down the line. Councilwoman Crow.
Crow, aye.
Eckert, aye.
Lipdahl, aye.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Councilman McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
And Councilman Newell.
Newell, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us remotely. And I'll note for the record, Councilman Tabor is ill this evening. We're going to move on to public comment. You'll have 3 minutes to address the City Council. If you would come to the podium, share your question, concern, or thought, and if you would share your name and place of residence. And I'll call again for public comment. And while I'm doing so, I'll note there'll be a second opportunity for public comment at the end of the regular session, the end of the workshop, before we go into executive session. I'll call for a last time for public comment. And not seeing any, we're going to move on to agenda item 5, which is the mayor's report and council comments. And we'll start with council comments. Good evening, Councilwoman Crow. No comment. Councilman Eckert. No comment. Councilwoman Libdahl.
I can't believe I get to be the first one to say congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks on winning the Super Bowl. I'm not actually, admittedly, a huge football viewer, but I get behind, Pacific Northwest sports when they're doing well. And I'm just always proud of our area. So congrats. And it seems like downtown Seattle held it together pretty well from what little I've seen so far. So that's all.
Councilman Fitzpatrick.
I just want to say go Seahawks and thank everyone who's here tonight. We really do appreciate the presence of the public and everybody else who participates.
Thank you, Councilman Fitzpatrick. I will now do the mayor's reports. And
Councilmember,
we have those that are attending remotely. Councilman McVeigh.
Just greetings to my colleagues. Thank you for letting me join remotely this evening. I look forward to a productive session. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman McVeigh. And Councilman Newell.
Yeah, echo the sentiments. Thank you for allowing me to participate remotely. Hopefully the weather holds and it'll be nice next week when I'm back in Poulsbo.
Thank you. Now I'll move on to the mayor's reports. And I'd like to start with something we've referenced earlier in council meetings, if the city clerk would put up. And we can scoot back a little bit on that. But what we're displaying there is the document for the largest bond issue in Poulsbo history, some $21 million. And it went out this week and it will be priced and put into the market. This is quite a worthy document. Number one, it's about an inch thick, double-sided. If we could zoom up to the top again, Rhiannon, and I want to share what the council has discussed earlier. And you'll notice in the upper right, that's correct, you're looking at it, Standard & Poor Global Ratings, rating a AA. That's one of the highest in the state of Washington, and almost unheard of for a small city of under 20,000 people to have that AA rating. That AA rating saves our taxpayers and citizens a considerable amount of money because we'll be receiving one of the lowest interest rates on the open market you can have for a municipal bond. You also see the amount up there, City of Poulsbo, Washington, 21 million and change. These are limited tax general obligation. That means they're spread across the entire property tax base of the city of Poulsbo. It's the general obligation of the entire city, which gives it that very high rating as opposed to a specific purpose. I'm very proud of our staff, our finance department, our city administrator, the city engineer and public works department. I could go down the list. All of those departments had to weigh in for this document, and the due diligence that went into it, tearing and looking into every corner of the city to determine this. Our financial strength is superb, or we wouldn't have achieved a AA rating. And that's from the largest bond rating agency in the world out of New York City, Standard & Poor's. So many congratulations to the city and to Debbie. I'll call on her in a moment. I want to give a breakdown in general terms of what the 21 million is for. Of the $21 million, some 15 million is going to the Poulsbo Events and Recreation Center. Those are the fields that are going to be built up past the Fairfield Inn next to Olympic College and its branch of Western Washington University. Those would be two large soccer fields, or as they call them in Europe, football, and also a group of outdoor pickleball. There'll be concession stands and some indoor facilities to support that. So that's a very large project. Then $2.5 million is going into what's called Knoll Road. That's a continuation of the Johnson Roundabout on the way to Bainbridge Island, which has the artwork in it. And I'm not supposed to refer to it as a bypass, so I won't. But I know it was a dream of past Mayor Mitch Mitchison to see a bypass built separate from Highway 305 as another conduit or arterial through the city of Poulsbo. This one will take folks up past the new housing divisions, past the schools, both the elementary, the middle, and the high school, the Languinette portion right now that's being paved with a roundabout, and will end at Lincoln. And so very proud of that project on behalf of the city. It's some 35 years in the making if one really tracks the history on the project. And last, $2.5 million for the Nordic cottages. Those were the senior, lower income 8 units that were built by Gateway Church near the library and close to the downtown and services, and had its last tenants move in last week, I'm proud to say. So all in all, that constitutes the largest bond issuance in the history of the city, some 120 years, at one of the highest ratings in the state. And many congratulations to the city staff that helped put this document together and show the strength of the city. And on that note, I'd like to call on Finance Director Debbie Boer for any other remarks in that regard.
Great, thank you. And a wonderful update. This is a history of not only the current council and current staff. This has been years growing our reserves. Our financial policies were significantly stated in that bond rating. So our practices financially and the economic growth that the council is determined by passing those comprehensive plans. So it really is truly a city effort as far as past elected officials and current officials. And as a wonderful update, the bonds were priced last week. We will receive the proceeds next week. right? Yes. And so those have all closed, and just the refunding of the issue, the payment terms will stay the same until 2033, but just by refunding those, it's a net savings over those terms of almost $139,000. So the city did well. We went into the market at the correct time. We had a great team of professionals. Our bond counsel, as well as our underwriters and our financial advisors, supported that process the entire time. And what people don't see behind the scenes is we have several emails, meetings, timings that all went into this for months. And so it's a great fruition to come forward, and a service that we provided, as well as providing the future growth of some of those great projects that we have going. So if you need any questions, please feel free to reach out. And now the hard work begins, right? We start the construction, and we track and pay those bonds every year. So thank you very much for everybody's support.
Councilman Eckert.
Yeah, I just wanted to, you highlighted is the 15 million for the perk, but just to remind folks that that's us front loading money that the facilities district is going to largely reimburse. So that's not 15 million from Poulsbo. We're covering a third, they're covering 2/3, but we had to take out the debt, which they will then help us largely pay back. And then for anyone that's interested, I think it's been about a month since Jeff and Diane gave us a really good presentation on the perk with the actual applications. So I feel remiss if we didn't. It's not just soccer fields; it's multi-use fields that'll be striped for soccer, lacrosse, flag football has uses. Which, if you don't know, flag football is now a recognized WIA sport at our high schools as a girls sport. They were trying to balance boys and girls sports at the high schools, and so they have now recognized flag football as a high school sport. And North and Kingston had, at least North had a team this year that did very well, or is doing very well. So flag football is an up and coming sport that we're going to be supporting through the perk in the off season, but lots and lots of things going into the perk. So that's a great presentation. I pointed several people at to see exactly what's going to be going on up there.
Thank you. Can I also add, that's a very valid point, is the Public Facilities District is funding about 66% of this project, and they collect a portion of the sales tax, and we were able to city to go out to debt for the entire project, saving the entire county money in their sales tax by achieving those rates in that bond rating. So I think it's a very good county program that we all get to share in.
That represents about $8 million from the Public Facility District. By being able to package this with the bonds that we were anticipating, it streamlines and saves money, and they're also able to take advantage of the city's AA rating. And so it's a win-win for all concerned, but a big shout out, and I appreciate it, Councilman Eckert, to the Public Facility District. Yeah, I think that just about sums it up, and congratulations. I'd be remiss not to give a great shout out to this city council and the past city councils that helped steward the policies and procedures of the city, to past Mayor Becky Erickson, 16 years at the helm of the city. All of it comes together and achieves this moment, which deserves credit all the way around. So thank you for bearing with that. I also have some good news for the city council tonight. On the question of the derelict vessels, which is legislative, a bill that we have proposed in conjunction with the Port of Poulsbo and with sign-on by the county and Port Orchard and Bremerton and many others affected by boats in harbors and waterways. It passed out of the House this afternoon unanimously, and we'll move on to the Senate. This is a great start for that bill. It started on a little shaky note because it had a fiscal note attached to it of over $1 million, but then we were able to clarify this is really just a change in definition so that we're able to more quicker and more aggressively address those boats before they become a sinking problem. And that has changed that. So we ended up with no fiscal impact and allowed this bill to speed forward. So I would like to give a shout out to the Port of Poulsbo. I believe the port manager had a letter to the editor in the Sunday paper, or a column, excuse me, James Weaver. And so we acknowledge the role of the port. And then lastly, I want to give credit to police officer and head of the Marine unit, Dave Hausberg, who after getting into gear and getting the police unit back on the water these last 12, 18 months, pointed out the discrepancies in the ability to enforce on the water. I remember doing a boat along, not a ride along with him. And it was a beautiful day with lots of little shining white hulls, almost like poetry. And it turned out only 2 were guests. The rest were transient housing floating on the water. And so it really pointed out we have a problem, and you want to address that problem before the boat's sinking, listing, or otherwise threatening environmental. And that's what this bill's all about. So keep your fingers crossed, but the derelict vessel is moving forward. Then lastly, I want to reference the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance that we approved funding for once again at a heightened level commensurate with the One Kitsap program. We now are and have 2 slots on the board. I've been on the board for a considerable length of time. I also sit on the executive committee, but we need a second from the city council onto the board of directors of the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance. I know Gary McVeigh might entertain it, but he was hoping I would query the rest of you as to your potential interests. It would not be an evening meeting. These meetings are generally anywhere between late morning to early afternoon, mid-afternoon. There's only 4 of them per year. But I wanted to put that on the table for at least you to think on. And Mr. McVeigh, if you'd like to add a comment or two.
Thank you, Mayor Stern. Yeah, we need a representative. I'm willing to do it if no one else is. I would also like to have the opportunity, if no one else expresses interest this evening, into talking with Councilmember Tabor regarding his possible interest.
Thank you, Councilman McVeigh. Any question or thought? Don't all volunteers rush immediately forward. Please get in line. So we appreciate the thought, Mr. McVeigh. We'll touch base with Mr. Tabor as well when he's feeling better. But thank you for offering to stand by on that. And that finishes my board, commission, and outside agency reports, but I'll turn to the council. Does anyone have an outside board or commission report tonight? Not seeing any. Mr. Eckert.
Let's chill with it. No, I was just so the art ad hoc art committee has been meeting, just so the rest of the council knows, and the mayor. So we are almost to the point of being able to come with a report. So we will have something for you. I just didn't want to let folks all think that we had forgotten that we do owe a report. But we are working out some final things that we need to before we present. But really good. It's a really good project that we're working on to without city money to make the outside of the building look a little nicer. So
thank you. And I'll turn to Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Just a small report. I wanted to mention that I made my that we know about anything relevant to each other, and there's a possibility we'll be seeing her at some of our future meetings.
Anything to report specifically from what you heard at that board meeting?
It was a pretty status quo meeting, nothing that I noticed, but it was very interesting to hear the principals' reports and kind of learn about the schools through that.
I'll just note that I know that yesterday was the final day for ballots on the school district issues. There were a number of them up and down the county. The last time I looked, it wasn't quite a majority in the early count for North Kitsap School District, though Bremerton was passing theirs. Anybody have any additional update? Well, we appreciate your liaisonship to the school district. Thank you very much, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mr. Newell.
Prop 1 for North Kitsap is now passing. Prop 2 is still underwater.
I appreciate that update. I didn't get a chance to look, and Doug, I know you track those closely. For those of you who don't know, Councilman Newell, before he was active with the city council and after he had his Navy career, was the chief operations officer for Central Kitsap School District for the better part of 20 years, oversaw many bond issues of this size that we talked about tonight for Central Kitsap School District, and was in charge of and oversaw really from A to Z the construction of the new high school at the top of Anderson Hill, including the auditorium, which is second only to those in Seattle as far as size and scope. So he comes with a great deal of expertise in the areas of operations of school district, as does Mr. Eckert from a directorship, some 6 years with the North Kitsap School District. So we have a lot of expertise up here beyond city that includes school districts, and I appreciate that. I'm going to now turn for department head reports, and I'll start with our city administrator, Rob Gelder.
Good evening, Council and Mr. Mayor. One fine point that I'd like to add to the report out on the derelict vessels is that was definitely a group effort bringing that legislation forward. But which is really kind of a great takeaway is that it was voted off the floor of the House unanimously. I don't recall if the mayor was able to share that, but that does bode very well for the legislation going forward, even though there was not a Senate companion to that. So that is really helpful.
If I could tag on, I'm glad you clarified that once again. We owe a lot of credit to Representative Addison Richards, who agreed to sponsor that bill. I believe he's out of the 35th, 26th district.
Mm-hmm.
And so we acknowledge that. And really here on the peninsula, we have the 23rd legislative district. We have the 35th and the 26th. And really, we're all in the same boat. And I think we take that attitude from Gig Harbor all the way up here to working together. And this is a perfect example of that. Thank you, Mr. Gelder.
Certainly. And your use of boat was intended, correct? So a couple other things. I just want to give a shout out to our very own Sergeant Jay Gillen, who was recognized Saturday night at the Chamber Gala, and definitely appreciate the recognition of all of the members of our force that were nominated. Definitely a deserving recipient of that, and to his credit, repeatedly mentioned that the honor really was to the department as a whole, and his role in there. So, and then of course our very own Rachel Cornett was nominated, one of the nominees for Volunteer of the Year, but was not selected, but definitely a worthy nominee as well. And just a reminder to the public that we will be closed on Monday, the 16th for President's Day. And that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Gelder. And let's hear again from our finance director, Debbie Boer.
I have nothing further. Thank you. You'll hear from me in a bit.
You have nothing to add, and you can say that clearly, right?
No, I have no comment, but just kidding.
So Debbie and I go back nearly 30 years with the city. She is a department head of me on city council. We have a joke going on that when we call on each other, do you have anything to add? Of course, the first thing out of our mouth is no. And at that point, we both proceed with whatever it is we want to say. So we have a good time with that, don't we, Debbie? Some 30 years now. Our Health and Human and Housing Services Director, Kim Hendrickson.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just 3 reports on grants. On your consent agenda for next meeting, I'll be bringing forward a grant with the Suquamish tribe. Because it's consent and we won't have time to discuss it in a workshop, I just want to spell out some of the details for you here tonight. The Suquamish tribe, as I think you all recall, is currently operating as a provider within the Recovery Resource Center, and that arrangement has been a great benefit to city residents, our members. It's been really great having them in our center. It's been so successful, in fact, that they've decided to take over an entirely new unit of the building that we're in next door so they can expand and add another provider. They really like being with us in Poulsbo, and we're so happy to see that expansion. Because they're leaving the center, we need a new arrangement with them. They will no longer be paying us rent as a subcontractor as they have been for the past year. Starting next month, they'll be paying us a small fee for our basically reception services. We'll continue to direct people to their services as part of the Recovery Center and handle some of the administrative aspects of running our center connected to their services. There'll be a very small fee associated with that service that the city provides. So that contract will be on your consent agenda next week. Kitsap County, as you might recall, gave us a small 0.1% mental health chemical dependency grant to help us with operations at both the cafe and the center. It's a little later than we had hoped to get that contract, but we finally have it, so it'll come to consent and allow us to pay for part of the services of 2 peer support specialists at the center and the cafe. Finally, big sigh of relief today. We rely pretty heavily on a healthcare authority grant to run the Recovery Cafe. We were told when we first got that grant back in 2024 that it would repeat every year. But in light of the budget issues in Olympia, I don't take that for granted. We were told by our grant manager today that we will definitely be renewed this coming July. So that funding from the Healthcare Authority, thankfully, will continue, which will allow us to continue the Recovery Cafe. So good grant news from H3. Thank you.
Congratulations, Kim, for your hard work. Kim mentions co-located but independent facilities that are stacking up there on the backside of the building that has the Empower Church also co-located in it. And I'll note that it was a couple of years ago, even in front of Recovery Resource Center, the suggestion was made to the Alcoholics Anonymous chapter, Friends of Bill, that when they lost their lease downtown, they might take a look at that building, and they're in there as well. So it's become a real nucleus of activity that supports each other. So thank you for continued hard work, Kim. Our city parks, I call them city parks and destinations because he does such a great job of traveling the world, but in fact, it's Parks and Recreation Director, Jeff Osman.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. Good evening, community members. So on the theme of preparing for the future and grants, RCO had its webinar, this Recreation Conservation Office, because the upcoming grant cycle starts this year. And there are some really intriguing grants that we may be eligible for that could help. So we're meeting with the grant manager and their team tomorrow. I'll update city administrator on some very intriguing ideas. I didn't realize there could be funding because it's recently changed. No promises, just I'm hoping to have some good updates. Other things that we're preparing for the future. We're hiring. Hey, so we have the Senior Adaptive Recreation Specialist that is now posted live on our city website. That's a part-time regular position. Thank you, Council. And then we also are hiring facility attendants for our recreation center. It's a good entry-level position for managing the facility at odd hours when the rest of the city isn't open, but we still are providing services. We also are working on one thing I want to share. So we had some feedback after presenting special events last month. Hang on here. Thank you, Kim. Where is the big view button that hits more? Found it. Okay, please draw your attention to the screen. So we had some great feedback from the Bunny Fun Run. It's a new event that's coming from Poulsbo Community Church. And we talked to the event organizer. We also talked to our Public Works Department and our Police Department, and they modified the route because it originally was going to go up Bond Road, and there's only sidewalks on one side. And so too many people running in different right? So they proposed a different route, and so it's the you'll see the details. It's the same time, it's the same participants. They have additional volunteers of 25. You have to be over 14 to run. It's only on city sidewalks, crossing where there's lights. And what's really neat is that they have volunteer bunnies who will be out in front of the group. And then they have volunteer turtles, which I appreciate for myself, who will be at the back of the group. And then the kids themselves just are going to participate on Poulsbo Community Church. So just so you know, that event route has shifted. And then the last update, please, I believe it's the last update. It is. And that is all things perk. That's taken up a lot of our time. It's very exciting. You'll see a lot of us, I think, tonight, next week, and ongoing. And that's it for our updates for the department.
Thank you for your hard and enthusiastic work, Parks Director Oswick. I'm going to turn to our Planning and Economic Development Director, Heather Wright. Good evening, Heather.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, members of the public. I'm going to have a Richard Dawson Family Feud moment and share with you what the survey said. Last week, we ended our meeting with a survey about the programs and incentives you were most interested in pursuing. And 5 of the responses of the 16 that you had to choose from bubbled up as consistently fully interested in as a council. So I'm going to share those with you and the community that's listening. They are the UGA swap and annexation, the local housing fund, land bank and land donation program, fee reduction and deferrals, and the preservation and acquisition programs. And then the other 4 programs and incentives that came up not unanimously across the board, but high up, somewhat interested are density, public and private partnerships, dimensional design flexibility, and grant partnerships. So we'll be bringing forth a package for you all next week and talk about ways that we can implement those to increase housing affordability. So thank you for your hard work. And for those that I had to hound a couple of times and asked to take the survey, I apologize for having to interrupt you all, but I really appreciate all that you've done to get us to this place. And then lastly, I wanted to share that the downtown parking meeting will be this Friday for those interested at 9 a.m. right here in the chambers that want to share any of their comments or concerns. And then we won't have one next month on a Friday morning. Instead, we will have it on the first Monday of March, which will be March the 2nd, and that'll be at 6 p.m. for those that want to attend. Thank you. Any questions?
Heather, might you, on the topic of housing affordability, review with us what next week's workshop will be? And in fact, just go over all 4, but end on next week's, because I know we have a number of people in the audience highly attuned to that.
Absolutely. So next week, we'll be talking about implementation of these programs and some of the trade-offs if we pursue them. So what are the impacts on staffing and our budget if we're to move forward? And if we have a consistent push from our council to move forward with these programs, at our last meeting in March, we'll put together a timeline of what this may look like and some of the considerations you'll need to make in terms of, again, funding and staffing, and where exactly these programs are going to move the needle on housing. So we will show you if these programs are selected, it's likely it will result in housing in this category.
Any questions for Heather? Mr. Eckert?
Yeah, I think back at the first one, this is the one that Nicole promised where we'll really get into the weeds on some of this. So I was thinking, I think I heard you say that the reduced fees was one of the ones that made it not across the board, but next one down. And I know we talked about in that first one about, the $58,000 that amounts to essentially fees and for upfront costs that goes into each house. So are we going to get into a real nitty gritty breakdown of that and what we can do with kind of what of each impact fee is we have control over or don't control over, or how much we can, because I think that one's got a lot of granularity that we could probably end up talking about.
And it's great because that was the reason we originally thought to put this series together, because that was the next item on our work plan, was to bring forth that discussion around those fees. And we didn't want to bring those forward in isolation of all the other programs you could consider. So what we'll drill down at the next meeting is which fees you might be interested in moving on. But we won't actually ask you to make those hard decisions, but we will talk about where you do have control, what fees we have in place. And then if you are interested in moving on, for example, if you want to reduce permit fees for affordable projects, then we'll follow up with a separate workshop where we really dive into that. But we won't go into those full details. We just won't have enough time. We want to show you what it will look like in an implementation timeline and staffing and our capabilities.
Any other, Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Heather, I just wanted to say thanks for shifting the next parking meeting after this month's. I hope the public is taking note of that, because having an evening meeting for business owners and operators who are working during the day has been highly requested. So I wanted to note that the city has met that request. And I really hope that the people who are asking for that will come to that meeting.
Thank you for that.
I want to make sure I don't overlook Councilman McVeigh or Councilman Newell. Any question or thought for our director, Heather Wright, for planning? Nothing for Mr. Newell, and I won't put Mr. McVeigh. Thank you, Doug. I won't put Gary on the spot. He's out there. I will note that at the end of this series of workshops, which will take place in March, I'm holding in abeyance the creation of the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission on private-public partnership solutions for affordable housing ownership. My own keen interest, not to be limited to that, is ownership for the workers, for more limited income, whether it's seniors or young families or individuals. My keen exploratory will be to look at housing ownership options, but it's certainly not limited to that. And so we continue to hold that in abeyance, waiting on the completion of these workshops. I had a chance to again compare notes with City Administrator Gelder as we begin to flesh out what you could call the charter of that group. I do have a question for Mr. Gelder in relation to the affordable housing Heather just referred to that we spoke on briefly. I have a keen interest, and we've been sitting now for a year or two or three on the idea of UGA swaps. We received our urban growth area from a very long ago county commission. I think it was Chris Andreessen, Tim Botkin, and Jan Angel, if memory serves me right. And that goes back more than 20 years. And when we created that UGA, a lot of critical areas, ravines, wetlands were included that aren't commensurate and meet the charter of being a city, having to fulfill density requirements for the state. Just very briefly, Mr. Gelder, what might be conceivably involved as we look at that exploratory to create more lands that are suitable for housing options?
I'm sure our Planning and Economic Development Director could answer this question as well, and please fill in any gaps that I might offer. But it basically, under state law, allows the opportunity now to what you might call balancing the UGA, such that it's not an expansion of it, but looking at what lands you have, having a conversation with the county, because they're the other jurisdiction that we neighbor with, to be able to do identify those that are less developable and with those that are more developable, and then be able to basically swap those around so that we can rebalance our boundaries to something that will support our long-term objective of absorbing the most of the density that's coming to the county. And it's really a two-step process of really looking at the retooling, the rebalancing of the UGA, and before you can ever look at incorporation or the annexation of those urban growth areas into the city, incorporated city boundaries. Does that make sense?
And it'll certainly be up to this city council to decide on the policy of that. And if we get that far, it'll be up to the county commissioners willing to entertain us and negotiate and explore with us. But it certainly remains a very big option for all parties. Heather, anything you want to add on a note on the UGA question?
I think City Administrator Gelder captured it perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. We're going to move on. I'll note that our Public Works Director, Diane Linnaeus, has successfully returned from her vacation. I hope you found it re-energizing, because we need and depend on you. And I'll call on Diane at this point for a report from Public Works and Engineering. And again, welcome back, Diane.
Thank you. Had a great trip. So I just have a couple of updates. I want to let you know that the next time you go to our Public Works facility, you'll be really impressed with the changes that are in process to have an emergency operations center in what was the sanctuary at the old church. As always, we have a team of individuals that are very good carpenters as well. On the consent agenda tonight, you officially approved the budget amendment, and in typical fashion from our operations team, they'll be done shortly after that. They're very quick at getting the project done. A few weeks ago, you approved a grant application for a retrofit on Knoll Road with the Department of Ecology. It got very Charlie and Rachel submitted that, and it got a very positive response. It looks like we might have a high potential for a grant coming our direction from their hard work. And you'll have the opportunity to congratulate Charlie, because it's kind of the Charlie show tonight. He's got quite a few things on the agenda. In terms of solid waste, we're working on our request for proposals and our contract to solicit available companies to outsource solid waste. And that's a decision that you'll make this year on whether or not you want to outsource solid waste. I can tell you that the communication with the industry has been very good. We have a draft RFP and contract that's going to our attorney this week, and we anticipate that we will send all of that information out for industry review the first week of March. So I'll give you an update probably the first week of March, if not sooner, on the survey results and all of the work that's been done there. I will tell you that the survey that went out, we got 44 respondents. That's 1% of the customers in solid waste. I don't consider that statistically a representative of the city, but we did get some good information that we're weaving into the process. And then finally, the PERC was mentioned a little bit tonight, and the funding for the PERC and the bond. We have advertised the project, and March 3rd is the bid opening. And we have had really good interest in the project. So I think that we'll get some really good bids on that project as well. So we have plenty to work on. Thank you.
I can't imagine a better place for an emergency management center than the sanctuary of a church. And we even have available our own public works crew leader, Mike Lund, to lead us in that emergency. So we appreciate you wearing both hats, Mike, very much. We're going to move on. Josh Raines, anything from engineering to report? And we're going to swing over the room then to our city clerk, Rhiannon Fernandez. Nothing to report. Information technology, Brooks Rendell. Nothing to report. Heather, do you have your mic on purpose? No. So on that note, then, we have heard from city administrator and department head comments, and we're moving on in the agenda as provided tonight. Item 8 is the consent agenda, and I would entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A through C, unless there's anyone on the council who wishes to otherwise ask a question of any of those. Otherwise, I'll entertain that motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve consent agenda items A through C.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any question on the motion? Otherwise, I will call for the vote. I'll start to my left, Councilwoman Crowe.
Crow, aye.
Eckert, aye.
Lived aye.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Mr. McVeigh
McVeigh, aye.
and Mr. Newell.
Newell, A.
Thank you all. We're going to move on to the regular business agenda now. We're going to start with item 9A, which is Nordic Cottages, the First Amendment for Property Management Agreement. And I'm going to first call on City Administrator Rob Gilder to speak, as well as Kim Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, good evening. Before you for your consideration is the First Amendment to the property management agreement that the city has with Housing Kitsap. And just so as a little bit of background behind this, this is pretty much just an administrative amendment to that agreement. We went through a process, as you all know, probably more intimately than others, as we are a participant in the WCIA, which is basically an insurance pool. So our insurance pool puts various parameters around sort of the stock language and limits that we are looking to achieve when we enter into a contract. Similarly, Housing Kitsap also is the member of an insurance pool. So we had the opportunity that basically this is the terms that we had were not typical for a housing authority. And so we went back and forth and we went to WCIA in Farah, who is specifically our individual that we were working with, along with our own legal counsel for the city, and realized that it was probably okay to, in this instance, to amend the commercial general liability insurance limits that were in the original contract that was adopted in the fall. So we are proposing for your consideration to amend those to new limits that are no less than $2 million each occurrence or $2 million in general aggregate.
Any question for Mr. Gelder so far? And are we going to hear Kim?
I have no update to what you're considering tonight. Just might note, since this is on the agenda, that 8 of the 8 units have now been filled by Housing Kitsap. So we have a full house at Nordic Cottages.
Yeah, we have Dean Nail in the audience if there were a question on the Housing Kitsap component, but I've spent enough time with Dean today already, didn't I, Dean? So, Councilwoman Livedall,
I'd just be happy to make a motion if
I'd
everybody's
be
ready.
happy to hear it.
Okay. I move to approve the First Amendment for Property Management Agreement for Nordic Cottages and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
I have a
Second the motion.
And a second from Mr. Fitzpatrick. We have a motion on the table. Any question on the motion or thought? And I'll look also to Mr. Newell, Mr. McVeigh to make sure there are no questions. And then I will call for the vote, not seeing any questions, and I'll start with Councilwoman Crowe.
Crow, aye.
Eckert, aye.
Livedall, aye.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Mr. McVeigh
McVeigh, aye.
and Mr. Newell. Mr. Newell froze.
He's having connection issues.
Public speaking is hard to do, but he should free up here in a moment. We will move on because we have a majority already on the record and we can capture Mr. Newell later. Is that okay, City Clerk?
I'm not going to record a vote for him. He was unable to vote.
Yeah. So we're going to move on. Item 9B, Leadership Kitsap Rest Park Project, which is the overnight vehicle parking rest park screening program service. I just want to note, and I had a chance to talk to Mr. Gelder at length about this. We've heard it referred to both ways, as a safe park and now as a rest park. I think the distinction, as I best understand it, a safe park has less facilities. And the rest park is more highly developed and has wraparound services. And I want to also share that those who might be utilizing these 4 or 5 spots, such as they are, would be known to us and referred there specifically by the services group. So this is not a random come see, come say type facility, and we're referring to it as a rest park. On that note, I will turn to Kim Hendrickson. Kim, could you lead us in this discussion?
I'd be happy to, Mayor, and thank you for that introduction. I think that something that I hadn't anticipated when we first talked about starting a recovery resource center is all the adjacent services that it would allow us to do with that base of the recovery center. And exactly as you say, the idea behind this safe park is that people spending the night at that park are members of our recovery community. In order to use the park, they're already engaging in services at either our recovery center or they're members of the recovery cafe. These are people that are engaging with us, are part of our community, are known to us. I see this in many ways as an extension of the work that we're already doing. Just to remind council, this is a topic that we came to you as a workshop item back in early December. This is an idea that was born of Leadership Kitsap, and I'm happy to have many people in the Leadership Kitsap group here in the audience again tonight. This wonderful group identified a really pressing need in Kitsap County for a safe place to park for people that live in their cars. They've done a heck of a lot of work with a local church, with the city of Poulsbo, with Fishline, trying to figure out how best to address that need. When we came to council to talk to you about this issue last in December, there were a couple of questions that council had that I'm happy to say we can answer tonight. One of the questions that you asked us was, is this something that's acceptable to our legal counsel and to WCIA? We have vetted these ideas and agreements both through our city attorney and through WCIA, and indeed in your teal packets tonight, you have the latest version of the agreement that we're asking you to consider. That's got some small line edits from WCIA. So this is very up to date with their suggestions and their approval to go forward. The other question that was asked, I'm sorry, it wasn't in the last workshop session, but it was in a private email exchange, just questions about how we would handle the issue of people not abiding by the rules that are staying at the rest park. And I think for that, I'm going to invite the cafe coordinator, Summer Anderson, to share her thoughts. Summer's been absolutely instrumental in working with with Leadership Kitsap and to fleshing out this idea and figuring out how it would best serve our members. And I'd very much like Summer to talk about how she envisions our action should somebody not be abiding by the rules at the park.
Thank you for coming here this evening and addressing us, Summer.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think the members of our community that will be using the rest park will already be known to us. I think there is a high level of accountability that we already have at our center and cafe, and expectations about how we conduct ourselves, the culture that we're trying to build. And my hope is that the rest park will be an extension of that. I think everything warrants a conversation. If there is something that maybe is off for a day, maybe somebody had a bad day. And so I do think it will always, warrant a good conversation, a reminder of what people have agreed to by staying at the rest park. But at the end of the day, I think, if we're issuing parking passes, we'll just say, hey, your parking pass needs to be revoked for a period of time. Come back if you want to try again. Similar to our values that we, uphold at the cafe and the center. There's always room for growth and to try again. But I think the hard line would fall on the church too, if this is a hard no, that it just be a trespass situation like we've encountered in other areas near the center. But definitely conversation and accountability.
I certainly feel comfortable with everything you're indicating myself, but I'll turn to my colleagues right now. If the two of you are prepared to answer some questions, I'll start with Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Kim and Summer, for being here. This is a really wonderful program. I just wanted to ask a question. I noticed on your program rules that your fourth rule is that the passes are valid for 90 days. And I was wondering if that's because you envision people using this program with the goal of being weaned off of it, or if there's an expectation of reauthorizing good behavior for a lengthier period of time. And if so, what might that look like?
Thank you for reading the packet so carefully. This is actually something that was suggested to us by Leadership Kitsap, and we're deferring to them on the duration of the program. I think it's an interesting ideal that people will come for 90 days, receive services at the center and membership at the cafe, and then be able to move on. I'd like to try it. In reality, what I've learned in being involved with the center and the cafe is that we have such a dire shortage of affordable housing in this county. It's very difficult for me to imagine that somebody's going to find suitable in that 90-day period. But again, I want to respect the hard work of Leadership Kitsap that made this proposal and has this ideal in mind. And before we say no to that, I'd like to see how it works.
I'd like to call on Councilman McVeigh, who early got involved in this effort, parallel with a county committee, looking not only here at Poulsbo, but throughout the county. Mr. McVeigh.
Thank you, Mayor. Kim, one question. About a little less than half the budget is dedicated for $3,000 for a vehicle repair fund. Can you just talk a little bit about how you see that being used? Is that if like somebody has a dead battery at the park, we help replace that, or can you just kind of tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We are very deeply grateful to a local church for stepping up and volunteering their parking lot to be part of this program. What we don't want to see happen is somebody having a dead battery or a car that doesn't move. So a car can't leave the property on the non-program hours. So we have money in reserve in case somebody literally can't leave the park during the non-park hours to help them get that car repaired and be on their way when the park is not open.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Eckert.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the answer. I had raised a concern about, if we bring someone in there and then, would they agree to be part of the cafe and the center and then maybe stop complying or go past it? Because one of my main concerns was we've done a lot of things to provide security for the staff at the center. And now we're outside the center, and I didn't want to see them get into a situation where now they're off-site having to deal with someone that maybe is not compliant. So I'm glad you thought it through. You have an answer. That's great. I want you all to be safe, and I don't want you out in the parking lot having to argue with somebody over the situation. So that was my main concern, is that, your safety more so than how somebody's in the program. So Thanks for that answer. And that was, that was, in the end of the day, yeah, sure, there's going to be other situations, but that's kind of what I saw the most likely scenario is somebody just sort of fades away from the rules and now they have to be talked to and you have to go find them where they're at, which is going to be the parking spaces. So thank you.
Councilwoman Crowe.
I've read the rules. I haven't taken a deep dive in the packet. How do you address situations where someone might have a RV or, a van that might have some facilities in the vehicle itself? Are there parameters or mechanisms you have in place to address that? Because RVs, then uh, folks may not have what they need to do that.
Sure. I think it's the understanding that there will be no RVs there. That's really only single parking lots, stalls. I think vans would be okay. There is going to be a portable restroom there, so no dumping facilities. It's not campgroundish in that way, but I think people will just be asked to use the Santa can and not, be dumping anything there. So
There are some types of class RVs that will fit in a stall, but it sounds like you're prepared for even the smaller ones to address that. So I actually, I don't know the size of the stalls, but it sounds like you guys will be able to address it.
Councilmember, I think there's going to be all sorts of unexpected things that come up as we roll out this program. Leadership Kitsap did a wonderful job about getting these rules started for us and getting us on the right track. But I think this will be something that we'll have ongoing conversations with the church, the staff at the recovery center about what's appropriate and what's not. I can't even begin to anticipate all of the complications that we didn't think about in this agreement. So I'm just really confident because of this particular church and my excellent staff that we'll just work out these issues as they come up. Thank you.
Councilman McVeigh had his hand up. I'll see if he still has a question, but I will say, Councilman McVeigh brought up the budget and a little less than half, some 3,000 was earmarked for that vehicle repair. I want to state for the record again that the cost of the project to the city, a little over $10,000, is not coming out of the general fund. It has no impact on roads and engineering and all the other functions we do. It is coming strictly out of the affordable housing tax revenue that can only be used for that specific purpose.
Yeah. Yes and no. Since writing this description in the agenda, I've received guidance from Debbie that it's preferable that it comes out of our opioid settlement fund dollars and our professional services fund. So you are correct, Mayor, that this will not come out of our general fund. It does come out of a dedicated fund that is restricted to funding recovery services. It's not advisable that we use affordable housing tax fund. So I'm sorry for the mistake in the.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad we have that clarification on the record then, because there was an earlier impression or understanding.
I apologize.
That's a great. And Debbie, anything more to add on the financials?
No, she clearly stated it. We're good.
Any other, Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Just a quick clarification on the service hours. I noticed the service agreement says 9 to 9, but the rules say 9 to 8.
9 to 8. Where did you see that inconsistency, Councilman?
The service agreement says that the hours are 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. 7 days a week.
It should be 9 to 8. Thank you for flagging that for us. Thank you.
And I see Mr. McVeigh's hands up again. Gary?
Yeah, I was going to offer to make a motion if that's appropriate.
After that motion is acted on, I would like to invite up the representative of Leadership Kitsap. If she could have one of the seats there and introduce herself, how you came up with the idea, and share with us briefly the other team members. And I want to let you know, I spoke to Leadership Kitsap Executive Director Carly this morning to make sure she understood that one of her teams, we were acting on that tonight.
Mayor, per our retreat conversation about streamlined meeting rules, that should occur before the motion.
Ah,
had to bring up Streamline.
If the council will entertain me then on that, are you okay with me inviting the representative up for a moment?
I believe the word is aerodynamic now.
Dean, you want to take the lead on this conversation for Leadership Kitsap, not for Housing Kitsap?
Correct. Well, you know, I've had a fairly close relationship with the city through Housing Kids app. And as I entered my Leadership Kids app experience, we were trying to decide on a project. And we had all our own things. But one morning I called Kim and said, hey, if you had 5 volunteers for a year, what could you get done? And so we kicked around some ideas with around housing, but I've done that. And it was actually part of the project, so we couldn't do something we're familiar with. So after settling on a couple ideas, this rest park came up, and it was officially known as something else initially, but and we still try to call it the wrong names. But rest park is what we settled on, and the team agreed, and it's evolved to what it is today. So thank you very much for considering, and we're excited to see it get done.
And Dean, might you share the names of the team, and as you call those names out, if they would raise their hand as they're called?
I'm not going to say last names, sorry. So we have Will in the back, we have Richard in front, we have Katie, and we have Jackie, and then myself.
The council would join me in a round of applause for this extraordinary group that came up with this idea. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
And now, where are we?
Well, I was just gonna clarify, so the copy in the folder says 9 to 9, which is the amended copy. So Gary's motion should probably reflect that correction from, that it's the copy in the teal folder, but it's 9 to 8, vice 9 to 9. Correct? So this is the corrected service agreement, but this has the 9 to 9 hours on it.
Oh.
So it's not really helpful to watch them.
I'm not muted, Paul.
Councilwoman Livedall?
I'm just noting that in the packet we were emailed, it does say 9 to 8, but as
Right.
Rick mentioned, the redlined paper copy says
Good.
9 to 9.
Are you prepared to make that motion?
Well, Gary offered to make the motion, but I'm not sure off the cuff how that should be amended. So
Yeah,
I'll
I'm
take that.
gonna let somebody in the room do it, given
Yeah.
the confusion here. I think that'd be
Right.
best.
Thank you, Gary.
Move to approve overnight vehicle parking rest park screening program service agreement with the modification that the service hours are from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement on behalf of the city.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilwoman Livedall. Now we have a motion on the table for any questions or other expressions. Councilwoman Crowe? No. Mr. McVeigh, any other input?
No.
Otherwise, I'm going to
this
be
time.
entertaining the motion. Okay. Not seeing any. I'm going to start with Councilwoman Crowe on a yay or nay. Councilwoman Crowe.
Crow, I
Eckert, aye.
lived I.
Fitzpatrick enthusiastically aye.
Very good. Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
And I'm not sure Mr. Newell's back from his
He is here, but he's not going to do a video, but he's going to give an audio vote.
very
Little
good.
eye.
Thank you, Councilman Newell. We're moving on to item 9C, Lindvik Pump Station, and we were promised the Charlie Roberts show earlier, which we've been waiting for with bated breath, Charlie.
I'm sure. Good evening, council and mayor. So this don't have a presentation for this one, but this is the Lindvik Pump Station VFD project acceptance. It's the last stage in a project. We complete the project and we bring it forward to council for acceptance to release L&I and do all those types of things. just to remind you about this project, it was pretty minor repair to one of our pump stations, which transports sewer around the city. They all have 2 pumps. They rely on VFDs or variable frequency drives. And one of the VFDs went out about a year ago. And it was about 25 years old, so kind of at the end of its useful life. We put a small project out. Bainbridge Electric bid on it. They came in about $30,000 below the engineer's estimate and completed the project successfully. Minor change order, but overall very successful project. We got the pump station back up and running. So no issues since then. And entertain any questions about that.
I'll just add a note. I remember addressing Mike Lund in the audience, Public Works lead. I remember we had a sewer outfall where the phone didn't get through to the designated weekend on watch person. And that was about 25, 26 years ago. And we pivoted then to this automated frequency. Is that right? I'm trying to remember the history. On Lindvig, that's the one by Liberty Bay Auto. Yeah. And that's particularly critical because that's all along the shores of the bay there. And there's no room for error. And so all of this investment is a safeguard for the environment, as well as, I'll use the word streamlining for our public works and engineering crews. Any questions for Charlie?
Be happy to make a motion.
Councilwoman Livedall.
I just wanted to commend them again for the work, again for coming in under budget. And again for, the criticism that we hear that the city's not addressing growth, the city's not addressing infrastructure. You all absolutely are all the time, forward planning, doing the work. And so thank you. Every one of these projects that you're about to present tonight is addressing concerns, addressing growth, forward thinking. We're not reactionary. You all are proactive, and it's greatly appreciated.
You're here. Councilwoman Livedall.
Would you like me to make?
We are ready for a motion and then we can have any other discussion.
Yes, I move to accept the Lindvig Pump Station VFD project as complete.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the table. Any question or input from council? And I'm looking on the screen and I don't see any from our remote attendants. I will then call for the vote, starting with Councilwoman Crowe.
Crowe, aye.
Eckert, aye.
Livedall, aye.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
And Mr. Newell Audially.
Newell, aye.
Thank you, Doug. That passes. Our next item is Lincoln Well #2 rehab project, rehabilitation project. And again, Charlie, if you would lead us through that.
Yep, let me just bring up the presentation here. This is one of the things that's come up in the past 6 months or so that has some urgency with it, which is why it was put on the agenda for tonight. And there's some information in the teal folder that hopefully you guys saw. We opened bids last Friday and wanted to get this before council so we can get the contractor on board so they can complete all the work before the summer months, and specifically April 30th is kind of our hard deadline to get this well offline, rehabbed, and brought back online, but we're feeling good with where we are. We opened bids, as I mentioned, on February 6th for this project. It's to take our Lincoln 2 well offline, pull the pump out, do an inspection of the well casing, do some rehab work based on what we see, and then hopefully restore the full capacity of that well and put it back in service, all before April. We opened bids. The engineer's estimate was a little bit less than $150,000. We had 5 bidders, some pretty good interest for this project, which had a pretty quick turnaround. It's very specialized work, well drilling, well contractors. The low bidder was unfortunately non-responsive due to some paperwork issues that they submitted their bid with. But the second low bidder, which became the lowest responsive bidder, was Schneider Water Services, which is a very reputable company based out of Oregon, but very well known in the well business. And their bid was $131,620 plus tax. So overall project cost is right about what we had estimated it at. And chatted with the folks at Schneider, and they're looking forward to this and, able to meet our construction timelines, and they're basically wanting to get started within a couple of weeks here. So no concern over, meeting our.
Yeah, those
our date.
timelines are critical. I'm glad to see that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yep. So the work to be completed. As I mentioned, they're going to pull the pump out, and then our consultant GeoSyntech is going to video inspect the well and kind of identify the rehab procedures. We got bids on a bunch of options basically, and based on what we see in the well, they will ask the consultant or the contractor to do those options and do some test pumping, and then put the well back in place and restore capacity, hopefully. So pretty straightforward. And I've got a motion here. I think this was also in the teal packet, but it has the relevant information. Also should mention that we did a budget amendment to fund this project because it wasn't part of our CIP. So kind of came up and moved some money around to fund it because it is very important. Could be two. I think yeah, there's supposed to be a space in there.
Mm-hmm.
So
there should be two separate motions.
Yeah.
The last sentence is a separate.
Yep.
Does everybody understand the clarification from City Administrator Gelder? Great. Before we have discussion on it, I would entertain a motion and a second to place it on the table, unless there's a question as to the structure of the motion. Mr. Eckert.
Yeah, just you mentioned, so they said to have a budget amendment wasn't planned. Any fiscal impact then on the fund? Like, you said we're just good at the juggle projects, or how's this? What's this due to our water utility? I guess basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's coming out of water reserves, which are healthy. We got a couple of big projects that are not as advancing as quickly as we'd hoped. So we had planned to do a big construction project. We haven't got the plans for that yet. So there's money in reserves to cover this project, and this is important. So
I'll turn to Finance Director Boomer real quick. Any comment as to the water enterprise's ability to handle this project?
No, we have reserves as Charlie has indicated.
And if there's no further question as to the mechanical motion itself, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
I'll make the motion. I move to award the Lincoln Well Number 2 Rehab Project Construction Contract to Schneider Water Services in the amount of $143,860.66, including tax, to authorize the mayor to sign the contract on behalf of the city and authorize the mayor to sign change order up to 10% of the contract value.
And is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Eckert, second. We have a motion on the table for the top portion of what's on the screen. Is there any question or clarification onto this motion? Not seeing any on the screen either. I'm going to call for the vote. Councilwoman Crowe.
Crow, aye.
Eckert, aye.
Lipton, aye.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
Mr. Newell.
Newell,
Thank you, Doug. And I'll entertain a second motion.
Mayor, I move to approve budget amendment number 26-103 in the amount of $285,000 to fund the project.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second from Councilwoman Crowe. Is there any question on the motion that's on the table? And not seeing any, I'll call for the vote. Councilwoman Crowe.
Crow, aye.
Eckert, aye.
Lipton, aye.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
And Mr. Newell.
No, aye.
Thank you, Doug. Congratulations, Charlie. Well done.
Thank you. We're excited to get this one going.
That was quite the show, Charlie.
And again, thank you for being so proactive on this. All of our works.
And lastly, under the business of the council, we have Robb Park Caretaker House Accessory Dwelling Unit Contract and Memorandum of Understanding. And that'll be led by Diane Linnaeus.
Good evening, Council. It takes a team, so our team is sitting at the table here. This is a very exciting project. It's the kind that we all like to work on, where you bring some great people together and you make something wonderful happen for the community and the city. In your packet tonight, you have a contract for approval with Habitat for Humanity, and you have an MOU with both Habitat for Humanity and the Kitsap Builders Association. This project has a little bit of a story. It's a collaboration between multiple departments in the city. The project touches the planning department and their vision for model ADUs and basic plans, the public works department and parks that needs a caretaker's residence, parks in general department, Jeff's department, obviously at Robb Park, the finance department, because we're doing it in the most cost-effective way, and the engineering department, which all we do is build things, right? But really the idea came from outside the city. The idea for this collaboration came from the Kitsap Builders Association. Randall King had a vision for building something very quickly, if not impossible, and stepped up to the plate with Ian McLaughlin, who's sitting at the table here. And Heather thought it was a great idea working with them and got everyone all excited. And then KBA actually brought in Habitat for Humanity. We have Jake at the table. He's going to be our general contractor. And Mike and I were like, we have a caretaker's residence that needs to be built, and we'd love to have it be a model home. So I'm not sure exactly whose idea it was at different points, but it all came together, and we worked through a contract and an MOU. And I'm excited to say that I get to be part of what these guys have in mind and what we can all accomplish together. It's going to be a great thing for the community. And then there's Jeff, who, you know, likes to solicit volunteers, and I'm sure he's talked with the Rotary a little bit. And between him and Ian, we're going to have plenty of volunteers to help make this happen. I don't know how to estimate a project that involves volunteers or donations. So what you'll find tonight is when we put it together, Mike and I were thinking like we had to build it ourselves, because this doesn't usually happen, especially on a project of this scale. We have a shared goal for an affordable housing program in the city of Poulsbo. The Nordic cottages are the model and the example of kicking this off. And this is kind of a second step here in building a caretaker's residence that will also be for affordable housing and also for a caretaker for the park. So I have a few slides here, but I'm going to open it up to those who have been involved, because it is a team effort, to share their perspective on their roles.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the partnership opportunity. Again, I'm Director of Construction for Habitat for Humanity, Kitsap County. I do want to note that we are an affiliate of Habitat for Humanity, right? So everyone knows the name Habitat for Humanity is an international organization focused on housing, right?
And Jay, could you give us your name?
Name? Jake Carter, sorry. And so here in Kitsap County, we are focused on providing home ownership opportunities. So I'd love to talk with you further, Mayor Stern. And as a board member of the KBA, and this kind of wild idea came about in August, right before Randall went on a 3-week trip, emails started flying with Mr. Gelder and some of us about the idea of this project. I approached my CEO and our board about the possibility of being involved. And, you know, we're not only trying to build homes and sell those to people ourselves, but we're trying to broaden more housing opportunities. And so everyone agreed that this was a good opportunity for us to kind of give back in a way beyond what we typically do. And we do build homes with volunteers. And so, yeah, it's an exciting project for us and a great opportunity to get the KBA and all of their wonderful members involved to provide an affordable rental in the city of Poulsbo.
Thank you, Jake. Who wants to go next? Ian?
Thank you, Mayor. Ian Laughlin, KBA president. Yeah, Randall had some very aggressive timelines, and I think
I thought they were great.
Yeah, I seem to recall being promised 5 days.
Yeah.
What happened to?
Yeah, that was, and then he left. So it took, 6 months to get an agreement together. But I think this is a great opportunity to do kind of a public-private partnership and kind of test that out. I know it's one of the topics in the affordable housing slides, and I think it is a very cost-effective way to provide housing. And I think it's great to get all of our members involved. Jake loves the publicity, and I think it's going to be a good project. And thank you to Public Works. They're very involved.
Jamie.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Jamie Clough. I'm the Government Affairs Director with the Kitsap Building Association. I'm going to echo a lot of what both Ian and Jake have said tonight. Thank you for the partnership and for all of the help and support that the city has provided to us in getting this project started. We are very, very happy to be working on this and very proud to be supporting affordable housing in the city of Poulsbo. And very much looking forward to working and getting this ADU built. Thank you.
And Mike, do you want to add?
I'm ready to get it done. We've been a while without a caretaker up there, so it'll be nice to get it done. And quite honestly, it's going to be a fun project working with these guys, I think so.
I think Mike is paraphrasing past Seahawk football player Marshawn Lynch and trying to say he's only here so he won't be fined. Diane.
Okay, as I mentioned, this fits with our affordable housing goal, and this is something that Heather's been working on, so I'd like her to speak to that.
So council, in order for this project to move forward with Habitat for Humanity, wrong organization on the brain, the affordability component needs to step into the equation. And this aligns really well with the Department of Commerce and their vision for ADUs, that they would serve the 80% and below AMI. And so this project would satisfy that requirement as part of the qualification for whoever resides within that caretaker's unit.
You want to speak to this, Sinclair?
Questions? Councilwoman Libdahl.
Not really a question, but having been on this council way back when we had to assess the double wide that's been on the property and its failing condition, and thinking and trying to budget for a replacement. This is so satisfying to be thinking outside the box, and that's why I love being involved here. And while I'm not super into killing birds, this feels like if you were duck hunting and got like 6 of them in one shot, I mean, who's not satisfied by that? It's just great all around. So well done.
Why don't we get a motion on the table? Or did you want to make a remark, Mr. Eckert? Okay.
I think she's done. I'll say, I mean, it's not 5 days, but it's still pretty fast and it's still pretty awesome. And I think if we get it done just right, we could still put the banner up that says we were first. Or still, that's still a goal I think we should have. We get the first one of these plans up before anybody else, especially since it's Rob Park and it's the highest point. Nice big banner. But I mean, it's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be nice. It's going to be cheaper. I mean, like Britt said, I mean, this is a win all around. Yeah, make sure you advertise when you want volunteers wide. Poulsbo folks love to show up and help, if possible. I'll drop a few nails in if I can. So let us know.
You may not know this about me, but I also have quite a bit of construction skills. You can hand me some power tools and I'd be happy to
I
help.
didn't say I have skills. I just said I'll do it.
Skills.
There's been a lot of publicity. The Kitsap Sun, I think, had an article over the weekend. There's been 1 or 2 of the ADU presets already taken out, I think, Bremerton. And has there been anything else, Heather, you're aware of?
There has been movement in Bremerton and there's interest on Bainbridge, and we had 2 people last week in the city of Poulsbo limits express interest in 2 of the units as well.
We still need to build this first.
Yeah, and instead of being in someone's backyard, it'll be in a public setting, very visible, a demonstration project for the North End and for the county on the viability of the ADU presets. And again, Heather, a lot of credit to you, your team, for leading the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council over the last 2+ years on this effort. Tremendous effort.
Mayor, it is going to be open as a model home for 90 days. So the public can come see what, an 800 square foot ADU looks like.
Maybe there'd be the opportunity to promote it among KDA and maybe even KCAR and really get some visibility on this. You know better than anyone, Ian, and Jamie, you do this for a living, but really promoting that demonstration model quality to it before it becomes someone's residence. We afford the parking. It's in a public setting. It just works. Credit to all of you. Mr. Eckert.
I'll make a motion if no one else has any.
Okay. Sounds great to me.
And there's two listed. That's correct? Okay. Move to approve the contract with Habitat for Humanity for the construction of the Rob Park Caretaker House and authorize the mayor to sign the contract on behalf of the city.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the table. Now's the time for any clarifying questions or opinions or expressions. And I want to make sure I include Mr. McVeigh and Mr. Newell in that, if you have any. And not seeing any, I'm going to call for the vote. Councilwoman Crowe.
Crow, aye.
Eckert, aye.
Lindahl, aye.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
Mr. Newell.
Newell, aye.
Thank you very much, Doug. And I'll entertain a second motion if the council's ready.
I'd be happy to make a motion. I move to approve the MOU with Habitat for Humanity and Kitsap Building Association for the construction of the Rob Park Caretaker House and authorize the mayor to sign the MOU on behalf of the city.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Again, calling for any questions, clarifications, opinions in front of them, taking the motion. And not seeing any. Again, I'll start with Councilwoman Crowe to my left.
Crow, aye.
Eckert, aye.
Lived all aye.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
And Mr. Newell.
Newell, aye.
And in my opinion, this is worthy of some applause for everyone in their efforts.
Mayor, if I may, before we dismiss for break, not to say that we knew this was going to go through, but we hoped it was going to go through, and to allow the guys to start rolling and get it done quickly, we would like to set the date for the groundbreaking ceremony on Saturday, February the 28th, and it'll be at 10 a.m. So everyone can still enjoy the rest of their day and many festivities. So
I'll repeat that. Saturday, February 28th at Rob Park at 10 a.m. Hope to see you all there and invite the public as well, of course. Thank you, Heather, for reminding us of that. We are at that point
The
where
fire department has a ceremony that afternoon too, for their new ladder truck. So just for people's schedules.
What time would that be, Mr. Eckert?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. No conflict there. We are at the point where we're going to take a meeting break. I'll note it is just about 6:30, 5 or 10 minutes, council. What's your will? 5.
Just 5.
We're going to take a break for 5 minutes and reconvene the workshop portion at 6:35. Thank you. We're going to get underway in just a minute. I'm going to call the city council back into session. We're entering the workshop agenda portion. I'll note that Councilwoman Crowe has been excused from attendance for the rest of the evening. Also, to repeat what I said at the top of the meeting, at the end of the workshop and after continued public comment and closing comments from mayor and council, we will go into an executive session. And at that time, I'm going to state actual minutes. It's going to be 10 minutes time specific, but I just want to note that'll be done at the end of the meeting. On that note, we're going to move into our workshop agenda, and we're going to start with the first item, which is December 2025 financial status report from our finance department, Debbie and crew. And there you are. Good evening, Larissa.
Good evening. So first, I will start and present the sales tax that we have gathered or collected through January, and I will then also summarize the real estate excise tax, and then I will turn it over to Larissa, who will present the 12th period expenditures and revenues in comparison to the budgets and the cash flow. So let me share my screen. If I can get there. Why is it not doing? Where's the option?
While Debbie's getting ready to share her screen, I'll take advantage of the pause and put on the record that the mayor has created a financial working group under the authority of the mayor's office. That will be meeting once a month in conjunction with finance department staff in front of council work and presentations. It will consist of Councilman Doug Newell, Councilman Doug Tabor, Councilman Rick Eckert. It will meet the second Monday of every month at 3:30 until 4:30, and we'll be here to supplement both council's understanding and get in front of financial reporting for better depth of understanding. So I just want to note that for the record. Mr. Eckert. Pardon?
Oh, is it 4? Okay, I misunderstood. So I scheduled it at 3:30. I will reschedule that. I couldn't remember.
4 is preferable.
And we will make that happen. Okay, thank you.
I think the reason it was 3:30 is because technically staff is off at 4:30, but no rest for the weary. Am I right?
Correct. That's
There
right.
we are. We got that on the
I
record.
can do 3:30. It just means I have to go to work early,
No.
to leave early.
We will accommodate your schedule, so I appreciate that. So let me make that change. It was forgetting things in the midst of everything else, so I will get that fixed. So you'll get.
And
handled
Rob, you
after.
caught that, right? Clarification. Great. And that allowed you to get the screen up. So
That's
take it
right.
from here, Debbie.
Thank you. So looking at our sales tax, and this is collected in January, but it's for sales that have occurred through the months of November. And we will get our December's numbers at the end of February, so it's coming up. But looking at the sales in November, it's crazy when we hear about the surrounding communities. We still are seeing an increase. So we're almost 6% up from November of this year to November of last year. We're up about 1.7% for year to date. The good news is we have a budget and we're about 93% of the budget. If you looked at what's 11 months to 12 months, we should be at about 91.67%. So we're slightly exceeding budget, which is very good news because we bumped that up a little bit this year to go with the projections that we are seeing. And so that's very good news. Now, if we look at where that budget increase is, it primarily is, this is year to date. So I want to make sure that we compare year to date because sometimes everything's transactional. Do I need to make that bigger? If I can These things are hiding. I can't move this. Can I just do this there? There we go. Okay. So if you see, these are all the categories in there that people are paying into and Department of Revenue collects. So you'll see, it's very diversified. And so what we have seen for year to date is a great increase in accommodation and food services. So that's the increase. What we do see is a little fluctuation a lot of times between construction and retail. So construction is a lot of why the November showed the increase, and year to date, you'll see that reflection. So we have the projects going on. Not to mention the city projects other than road projects also support that. We pay sales tax on our own projects happening other than transportation projects. So as we build the perk, that will also bring up those numbers coming into 26 and 27 as we build that. Wholesaling usually is a lot of transactional items. So maybe a one-time sale of computer equipment or something to a business area and we report it. Information, that's the same type of thing. People are buying big software programs. And maybe they pay an annual distribution. So you'll see those numbers fluctuate. The ones that we really tend to follow very closely are the retail trade. So you can see we're up a little bit, and usually that'll fluctuate between the construction and that. And so that's a good news, is because that's a really determining factor of our economy and what's going on here. Also, the eating and accommodation and food services is another one that really is reflective of our economic activity.
Can I add a note here, if I
Yeah.
might, Debbie? For those that are on the council, you're in a position of privileged information by virtue of your election to office. You are able to meet with the finance director to get more granular information, for example, on retail trade down to specific businesses. It's predicated on a non-disclosure agreement, but you can get more granular if you have an interest in just what you're seeing here. Anything you would add on that score, Debbie?
Yes, for the purpose of that, we as a government, almost everything we do is subject to public disclosure. Anybody can see our numbers. However, businesses that are paying sales tax, they are proprietary information. And so their sales are not subjected unless they have their own financial statements that are produced to their shareholders. In order to see the data that's individualized, because we participate in a software program that gets down into the detail of what people are reporting into the city, you need to sign a secrecy agreement that is on file with Department of Revenue. And what that certificate does is says you are viewing this privileged information. However, you are legally bound not to share that or discuss that with anybody else because it could impact what their business practice and their business activity. So that's what's referenced to that.
Mr. Eckert.
Well, I will admit, I am curious how much mining is going on in the city, so.
Yeah, it's a big revenue generator.
So we might have to talk about that at the meeting.
Okay. Yes, I know it's funny. You'll look at, I remember one council member going, oh my gosh, this category changed 92%. It's like, it's $300, right? It's not, sometimes you can't pay attention to the percentages, but yeah, it is interesting to see who are paying into each of these categories. And so then if we look at retail trade, oh no, this is going back. So then here's a picture that is demonstrating, it's got several years of activities. And if we look at the green bar, that is the average for all of those months. So really we're trending above that 5-year average for each of those months. And then if you look at it, we're all pretty consistent. You can definitely see when some of the months are. September sometimes is dependent upon when school starts, although school supplies people are buying, and also Amazon shipping to us for the use of those. And then July is obviously summer months, and people are grocery shopping and buying their supplies for their 4th of July activities. So the good news is we're continuing to see a slight increase, but we're also staying pretty close to our average and our trend, which is great because that means we have diversified our revenue sources within the sales tax. Here's just graphs that really show. So you can see that retail trade normally is the largest category that we are collecting in our sales tax. And the next one is your construction industry. Those are the heavy contributors, as well as then accommodation and food services. So those are the larger categories that really we are collecting in within the city. And if you get down into each of the categories within retail trade, it's interesting to see this graph changes what people are bringing in. as to each one of these areas. So building materials usually will trend and the percentages will change, which is consistent with what's going on in your construction industry. And then as well as food and beverage are your grocery stores. And that really trends to also to timing as well as maybe your accommodations, what people are going out and eating. And motor vehicle, these are your car sales. So they're pretty consistent from year to year. But the good news, there's not a lot of fluctuation. So we stay consistent.
Question, Debbie.
Yes.
Some of our neighboring jurisdictions aren't experiencing the same factors. From your understanding or talking to the other offices throughout the county, any characterization you can make for those that are experiencing a downtrend? Is it any particular area, or is there anything telling we should be aware of comparatively?
I think what's supplementing some of our growth is construction. And as you can see, we're still pretty strong in construction. And you hear the engineering planning department saying, you know, we have all these activities going on. And usually when construction is going, that affects your retail places because people are going to your hardware stores to buy. We have Ace Hardware, we have Home Depot, we have the lumberyard. So a lot of times they're going to these stores to support their construction activity. And then you have workers in town that are going to eat lunch. So all of those, you know, so those all tie together and you kind of see your growth trends and your decreases based on what's going on for those activities. I mean, if you remember going back to when we built the city hall construction, as well as the construction people being in the city and shopping in the city really supported us through that decline where we continue to stay pretty consistent, unlike some of our neighbors. So it all comes down to diversification and economic development. And that is it for sales tax. So if there's any questions, I will also tell you that this is online. So people can go onto our website and find this as well as it was included in the packet. Now also assistant, we try to visit the retail excise tax because that is an indicator of the home sales going on. It's hard to measure year or month to month because it's very transactional driven. So we look at the months, but for instance, if somebody were just to change, like when Safeway changed ownership for their structure, they had to come and pay sales tax because they turned over their assets to the new company structure. So even though you didn't say Safeway selling, you didn't see them any activity, they're paying the real estate excise tax. And those larger transactions can fund into this as well. So the good news is we're very conservative on estimating real estate excise tax. And we had thought going into 25 that we'd start to see the home sales decline based on interest rates and based on, you know, the market. And so we're not seeing a lot of decline. I mean, it's definitely a little bit less than 24, but we're still staying very strong in those figures. And the good news is with that, we're consistent with our revenue projections or conservative with that, but it has restricted uses. So what we plan to use with our REITs is number one, it's funding the city hall issue that we had under, and it's also intended to fund this issue that we just passed this week for Knoll Road. And it's be used to support the perk payment from the city perspective. So it's pretty much spoken for the next 20 years, but when the revenue comes in higher, it allows that flexibility and to expend those tax payments over the years. So going through December, we exceeded our budget by about $121,000 and or actually more than that. And then you'll see that our revenue collection for 25 is slightly less than 24, but not a lot. And so the good news is we've stayed, we came in a budget 151% above budget. So that's the good news. And then looking at the graphs, it's just a comparison of all the years and where we're trending. And so again, month to month, it's not a very good picture because everything changes. But looking at the year to date comparisons, you can see that we're still pretty consistent, very, very close to our 5-year average. That answers to the growth. And then if we look at one more picture, since we have a full year in, this is a lot of history that talks. So 10-year average is about $987,000. And so you can see our graph here is it continues to grow. The price of homes went up, which was an impact to the growing real estate excise tax because it is based on estimates, but we're still pretty high up in our category and stay close to the average. And with that, I will turn it over to Larissa, who will now measure or talk about our annual or our variance report for all of our budgets and our cash flow. Scrolling back. Should have just paged it, but that's okay. I want to do it at the hard way. I don't think we loaded the memo, but you can talk about that.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. As we get started with looking at December's revenues and expenditures, one thing we want to keep in mind is that this report does not capture all of our revenues. So many of our state revenues are on a 2-month delay. So we won't have a complete picture of mainly our state revenues until the end of this month, and then have everything compiled in March. And so just we just want to keep that in mind as we're going through.
Just to add to that too, it's not only revenues, it's expenditures. So it's what we've always referred to as our 13th period transactions. Because we have to close the books as of December 31st, and then we open up a 13th period for all of our year-end transactions.
Yes, no, that's okay. So if we start just this very first section here, it does reflect all of our taxes. And if we focus in, Debbie just gave us a great overview of our sales tax. And this figure that our report shows, it does have, instead of our actual numbers, since we don't have our December yet, it does have an estimate in there. So that will vary a little bit from what Debbie just showed you as well. And then our B&O taxes came in very healthy, and we've been looking at budgets and adjusting those accordingly to those increased revenues. And also, this report does not reflect our fourth quarter B&O taxes, because those are due. Those were due on January 31st. So we'll have a little bit more growth in that category as well.
If I could add, thank you, Larissa, on the B&O tax. We originally projected, and I'll be on the high side slightly, when we started, and it was only going to be a first half year collection, but we estimated about $800,000. Of course, we were guessing at that point, which some of it was based on Bainbridge Island and other model entities. And then we budgeted 1.2 million based on that expectation. We rolled in at about 112% higher than that, 1.348 million. So that continues to be, I won't use windfall, Councilman Eckert. You're welcome. I learn as we go along. But I just want to note that the delta here is very much in the city's favor, well above what we anticipated. Just want that on the record. Thank you.
And just to clarify too, is on the B&O, there is a little bit of timing difference that we're seeing this year, because as you said, the first year that we implemented this in 2024 was for 6 months only. And then we went into 25 with a full year. However, it's the first year people, we had Gretchen tracking down businesses that didn't realize we implemented it. So those revenues are being applied to 26 or 25. My years are all, I'm working in multiple years right now. Sorry. So really, if we look at these figures, it's about $100,000 that should have been applied to 24. So just keep that in mind when we go through. And as we continue to run the program, it's going to be more stabilized. And then also reminding you, in 26, we hired that exemption for both of those. And so you might see a small impact on that as well.
All right. And then just the next section covers licenses and permits. And so that is our engineer building fees, and then street and curb permits. Overall, very healthy revenues for that category as well. And then next we have grants. And grants, so many of these are collected just on a reimbursement basis, and a lot of those requests for reimbursements are submitted in January. So this can be a little bit of a variable category. when we just look at the hard stop of December 31st. So our next report will definitely have a good, a final overview of our 2025 grants received.
And also remembering too that some of these grants have different timing issues, so some will be carried over into 26 as well. I think the behavioral health grants run on the state cycle of July 1st to June 30th. So sometimes it gets down to timing, but all of these grants should have reimbursement or the expenditure sides that will offset it as well.
That's right. There we go. And charges for services, this category also came in very healthy. And this section, it does have all of our parks and recreation, activity fees, passport services, muni court, and then our zoning and subdivision and plan checking for our planning and engineering department as well. And then fines and forfeitures, this is where we'll see our traffic camera infraction and then soon to be our parking enforcement when those revenues would be starting to collect.
And to add a note to that is when we started the year, we had a much lower revenue projection. And so in our mid-year cycle, if you remember, we increased that to be reflective of our traffic camera revenue and some of those growing revenues. So it looks like we're a little bit below where we should be, but just remembering we're much higher than we originally thought we were going to be.
And December will still be added as well. Yep.
Mr. Eckert, real quick, tell me about the services. I know we had detention and correction. I know we had budgeted higher for the jail at one point, then we didn't, it came in lower. Now it's coming in higher. I know you had said at one point we were having issues just where they weren't billing us for a long time. Is this reflective of some of the county finally getting around to billing us some of the things that we didn't, basically owed them but hadn't got the bill for yet? Or is it more reusage? Our usage just back up?
This actually is the revenue associated with it. So this is fines or reimbursements that are assessed by the court. And so sometimes if they feel that somebody can pay some of those costs for putting them in jail, they'll charge that with that. And I know that I've seen almost every activity associated with the law and justice, the police department, they've been more active. And so you'll see some of those revenues. When we get to the expenditure side, you will see the expenditures are higher than we projected. I believe they were having software issues, and I believe they're pretty close to on time now. They'll always have some slight delay for timing, but it's not the same as when we were months and months behind. So, but thank you for remembering that. Yes.
And again, I want to do a shout out to Councilman McVeigh or Newell. Please raise your hands at any point if you want to ask a question or a clarification.
Okay, and then just our final sections contain our investment earnings from our portfolio. And then one thing we did want to highlight is that our investment service fees, those are fees that we that are allocated from the utility funds for managing the portfolio. And about 60% of our portfolio, a little higher than that, is our utilities, and that supports our general fund services.
So what that means is we have all of our money pooled, and we invest every fund's money. And when we earn interest on those earnings in the utility funds, the general fund collects that for us performing that service.
Debbie, do you know what the state pool is paying at this point?
I think it's pretty close to 3.7%. I haven't looked for a while, but that one is very much fluctuates what's ever in the current market because the funds are so liquid. So when they say, they say to look what's in the current market, and that's the interest your earnings. And I think I still have seen it about 3.7, but I'd have to double check again.
Just 5 or 6 years ago, it was like 0.07.
It was less than 1%. Yeah, 0.001. It was
crazy.
They actually sent out memos and said, don't wire money because you're going to spend more money in a wire than you will earn in interest.
That's right. Yeah, let's move on. We'll just cover expenditures. And actually our summary graph here, we're collected, we're at, 102% of our projected revenues to date. And that is, again, without our 13th period and some of our state revenues that aren't shown.
Is this next page? Okay, there you
Yep,
go.
yep. And just on the expenditure side, we're organized by department. And just as Debbie mentioned, this report does not include several key things. One mainly is our final payroll for the year, which is contained in that 13th period. And then
Can you remind, what's our legislative line item for the voter? I'm assuming that's voter registration costs abbreviation there. What's that actually for?
yeah, we did receive that invoice and it did come in just slightly above our $45,000 budget.
That is what the county assesses us for getting the city of Poulsbo residents registered as voters. So that's their cost. That increased significantly like 2 years ago because they hired another personnel. So, but that's the cost, and they distribute it out to everybody who participates in the elections or has registered voters.
Did we want to talk about central services? For
pretty close, I would focus on
Yep.
transfers.
Okay, yes. And so in our finance non-departmental, that's where we have our transfers from the general fund to support our projects. And there is one remaining transfer that's that we need to do that'll be caught in the 13th period. And I think.
Page down.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Debbie, where will we see the outlay for the finance hardware software upgrade package?
That will not be in the general fund. That will be in our capital projects fund 301. So just one quick note on this. You're going to see this number, and this is the indirect allocation. It looks like a whole bunch of negative numbers and weird numbers. This is strictly accounting transactions and trying to get it out of department budgets for less confusion. But this is the amount of money that the general fund charges the utility funds for the services that we provide and support those utilities.
Debbie, does that vary between enterprises, or is that now a flat rate generalized experience?
It is a huge spreadsheet that's very confusing, and very few people would be able to understand it. It's based on all different variables. So for instance, the finance department looks at each one of the positions. We figured how much time we use to support the public works. Remember, we're doing the utility billing. And the clerk's department and the legislative budget is based on the number of agenda items allocated to public works. So every year we're going through and counting all of this. The utilities and central services is based on square footage of the building. They all have different measurement factors. And then part of the auditor's directions for the end of the year, we take all of those because it's built based on budgets in prior years. And then we take those factors and we update them to actual. So we still have quite a bit of work to do for the end of the year. But and so that will adjust, for instance, when we, and it also, one of the other items where the most variance is if engineering's factor is based on the dollar of projects, capital projects. So if more funds, more of their time is spent supporting utility projects, then the amount goes up. If they're spending more time doing governmental projects, then that amount stays out. So it really can fluctuate, but we're pretty close, and we do it to actual every year so that it's not just this estimate and growing figure without any basis behind it.
So it's an amazing amount of work. It's very similar to three-dimensional chess, and it meets the highest auditing standards. There's no generalization on that experience.
Yeah. And it's a little bit subjective, so there's always room for improvement.
All right.
You got it.
I got it. So I think just looking here, this again does represent a very healthy level of expenditures compared to the budget, and we have some some room to go there as we finish out our 2025.
So, and yeah, to highlight, if you see our revenues are higher than we projected, so that's the good news. Our expenditures are less. We are going to have some that will be hitting the 13th period for both of those. We'll have some funds where we expected to collect or to spend the money in 25, and we'll roll those over to 26. But you have very strong departments who are very conservative with their spending, and most of the times our expenditures are coming in less. So that's the good news, is we will most likely be using much less reserves than we anticipated. But we are trending very well compared to where we budgeted.
Zoom out a little bit for this one. And so this chart just shows our budget to actuals just in a nice visual form. So we're at same as the prior graph, 23.1 million in general fund expenditures, and budget to actual 20.3 million of actual. And this does include our transfers that we showed in the expenditure report as well.
So just to go back and highlight, just remembering general fund, we are a service agency. So, almost 60%, 55 to 60% of that general fund budget are wages and benefits. And then our other services is made up a lot of professional services. So really a lot of our funds are going to support the people who support the services that we provide.
Zoom back in a little bit, and this is just our comparison of revenues to expenditures. And the original budget was passed, as Debbie said, with a use of reserves, and it looks like we'll be using less than originally planned.
So before we get into the variance report, Larissa, a question for Debbie, and we'll certainly get into it in March with the finance working group and share with the council as a whole. When might we anticipate having the final numbers on carryover and being able to put to bed that? What one might be accurate?
I would say probably close to May, because we are under the time crunch. We have a lot of work still to do to get our year-end statements done because we are GASB compliant. So we have to wait for February. We have to do a lot of calculations for our retirement benefits. So much closer to May, we'll have a pretty round picture, but nothing resent. I also want to highlight too is in the expenditures, we are using reserves, but also reminding you that part of those expenditures are made up of transfers that we are transferring to our capital funds. So that's good because it looks like our expenditures are a little higher, but also part of that is reserving funds for future capital projects. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Great. And then a last question regarding carryover for you or Rob or both of you. Remind the council from the budget from last year, how many items are on hold that were recommended but not acted on until we understood carryover? Is there a great deal of overhang still pending on that, or like none?
I don't think so. I think the direction was we will revisit them all in the next mid-biennium budget process, but there were way more items funded in the mid-year cycle than I would have anticipated. So there wasn't a lot left on the table. There were a few things, but not a lot. So, and they'll be back in the next
there was
cycle.
an emphasis really on those one-time items versus the ongoing costs or all of the positions. So it's mostly positions that weren't funded.
Okay. And here we have our variance report, and this definitely reflects that we are missing those 13th period transactions, especially in our special revenue funds. So anything from 100 through 191, we do have some very healthy revenue variances, and those are for our traffic impact fees, our park impact fees, and then our REITs, as Debbie went through a little bit ago. And then
for Mr. Fitzpatrick, while you're explaining, Larissa, I'll just add, it was about 15 or 16 years ago, the Finance Committee asked the Finance Department to highlight on the line items, anything that was above 15% anticipated in green, anything under by 15% or greater in red. And that way we could track over time rather than waiting for toward the end of the year and have a better sense of trend. So I just wanted to interject that.
And it's primarily for the focus of general fund. But because a lot of these funds are project driven, and so capital projects, you're going to see a lot of times it out of that variance. What's good to focus on is our utility funds, because I think we only include our operations, and the city street fund is where we really want to focus those variance differences. Just to point out in Fund 301 is when you talked about the computer software, I just want to give you a heads up, because the council assigned $200,000 to go into reserves for 25 and then 200,000 in 26. We should be getting proposals back this year. And so we will have to do an amendment. I didn't want to allocate those dollars because I don't know the full cost, and we'll be calculating overtime and casual labor. But when we get that, that will all come before council. You'll see the budget allocated as well as a contract to do that. That if you're looking for that specific in there, it's not going to be clear.
And on the expenditure side, one key thing that we don't have reflected in the utility funds. So again, we'll see the payroll is not there, and then depreciation. That's a very large non-cash item for the utility funds that will definitely change the variance numbers as we finalize 2025.
And just to provide a little background on the depreciation, we have it set up where we should be posting monthly. We've had, which is good while we're going through the software problem, is we've had a software error that we could not get support to fix. And so all of the depreciation has now been posted, but we have not been able to post that all year. And so that's why you're seeing the huge fluctuation. So it's posted in the 13th period. And even though depreciation is a non-cash item, it is, as they are business type funds, it will reflect on their income statements or statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance, if you'd like the actual name.
And this next report, it just represents our cash management and fiscal compliance policies. So we, our financial policies, that we have 2 months of operating cash, and we maintain a 12% fund balance. And so there are just a little bit, you'll see a couple of red items there. And our Paths and Trails Fund, that, go ahead.
I can say is, again, this is where we want to really focus on the general fund and the city street fund, because we want to have that 2 months of cash. We want to maintain primarily the 12% fund balance in the general fund. So why sometimes your capital funds will outstand is because we're not going to maintain 2 months of operating cash for a one-time null project going on. But the good news is we're very consistent with our policy right now, which again goes back to help maintain that AA budget bond rating that we had. So it's a good thing to track, but it's just keeping in mind when they're out of variance, it's not a surprise. And if it is a surprise, we'll definitely bring it to your attention.
Debbie, does this statement here reflect the recharacterization of the neighborhood streets program?
I guess I don't know what you're asking. Sorry.
Remember, when we approved the budget, it was mischaracterized, the capacity as, I'm trying to remember, I had to sign that budget.
Well, the neighborhood streets, it's a little confusing because we collect the revenue in a special revenue fund, and we are using, if we're doing maintenance repairs, which seems really odd to do an overlay on a road, it's, a few $100,000 or $1 million, and it's considered operating, because the difference is what the accounting rules say is you built this road with a 30-year life, but you had to repave it with this, or upgrade it or repair it within 10 years to make sure it lasted that 30-year life. I mean, that I know they're not built to last that long, but as an example. But when we're building a brand new road, it's capital because we've increased that. And so that's where the differentiating. So we're collecting it in two pots. When we do a big major project that's referred to as capital, we're building a brand new road, we're restructuring the entire road from ground up. That's a capital item when we transfer it out of that special revenue fund to cover the capital. So that's where the confusion is. The good news is you do have funds in those, and your Public Works Department has the plan for how to repair those neighborhood streets. And you guys as council has been a very good job of delegating those funds for that purpose. And it also has enhanced the operations of streets, which helps the Public Works to maintain the streets on a regular basis, not only the neighborhood streets, but all of the streets and the right of ways. So that tax really is going directly to all of your transportation and road projects.
I know there's been some expression to me in the last month or two from individual members of the council, what more can we do with neighborhood streets? That we're not here to debate that tonight about increasing capacity, but specifically to you, Mr. Fitzpatrick, did you understand that the way this is budgeted is a little bit hard to understand?
Yeah, I don't have that. I don't remember the budget in front of me, but you have the plan laid out. I know that Mike has worked very hard to lay out those plans, and he has certain streets that they're focusing on with the funds that they have. But council, I mean, it's never enough, but you guys have done much better job of allocating funds to support that progress. And I think the direction and priorities has been heard, and we're moving in that direction. And whatever we don't use this year, it stays in that fund. So it might be that maybe projects aren't done this year, but we're building the reserve. So now you can do that larger project in the following year. It will not be used for general fund operations. It's restricted.
And what you were describing, if we have to move to replacing a street versus the work that Mike's doing now, does that change it from does that then move it back to capital?
Yeah, the funds are all the same. It's just how we report them in the accounting structure, right?
Okay.
So it still would be, if it's a neighborhood street that you're completely replacing, it still is using the neighborhood tax dollars that you've allocated. It just is how we account for it, that they all tie together.
But that being capital, if we wanted to use any of the funds that have restrictions on them, that, like, say they're restricted to a complete streets project, does the fact that it's capital now because we're replacing the whole street, does that play into it, or is that a conversation for another day?
No, because what's happened is council has self-restricted the dollars to neighborhood streets. The tax dollars, according to the state law, can be used for any transportation project. So it changes nothing in what you guys have allocated. You guys have said, we want to use these funds for neighborhood streets, so we are internally making sure that happens.
I'm thinking
but
about
it
like
could
the
be used.
cameras, like cameras in the RCW talks about can be used for public safety to include complete streets, like something along those lines. So I just don't know if we get.
Yeah, there's some rules
Do
in
we
the
start to get
RC,
into nitpicky accounting rules in there because we're rebuilding versus repairing, like I said, maybe another conversation for another day. But
No, the state law allows for maintenance of the streets with those tax dollars. So that's not an issue of whether we do it capital or operating. And I think there is some gray area in the law that allows them, if you wanted to do some public safety improvements. We've not allocated any of those funds for that purpose. It's strictly for paving and maintaining the sidewalks, the streets that go into the neighborhoods. We went way off.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, we're coming to the end here. This is just a bird's eye view of our expenditures, and the top two, left and right. These do not show capital, like Debbie was saying, those capital projects, depreciation, or transfers. And then the bottom two graphs, those are including the capital and depreciation and still excluding transfers, because we don't want to highlight potentially those expenditures could look doubled up in the system. So do better. And then we touched on our investment. We touched on our investment portfolio a little bit earlier, and I know Mayor Stern, you were referencing the state pool. And while I don't know the rate, what I can say is our $12 million, $12.4 million, we bring in between 35 and 42-ish $1,000 in interest on that per month. And then just the breakout. So our general fund, 18.1 million, and then 30.1 million in our utility funds, and that's 62% of the portfolio. So we have made it to the last page. And this graph, it just represents our trending lines for year to year for our investments in all the funds. And we're pretty steady, and we have let some investments mature, and that is to cover some of our large sewer expenditures that come in the end of the year. And that is also can be seen in the fluctuations in cash as well, and transfers also reduce cash in the general fund. And so
just reminding you that we had a sewer bill in December of $4.2 million. And so we had to let some investments go in order to pay that with the county. That is our share of part of the county's projects. And those are reflected in our city improvement plan. So it was expected.
Debbie, when's our next big installment due on sewer?
A good question. According to their contract, they're supposed to bill us every quarter. They're getting a little bit better, and thankfully you have a very good engineering team, and Charlie and April are all over it, and they review the bills in depth. They just saved a couple $10,000, $20,000 on the last review that they were charging us. I think they're getting better, but for instance, the bill we just got this month, was some of the invoices went back to like 2013, I think, as they've gathered them. We used to have the agreement that we would pay 1 year after the completion of the project. About 3 years ago, the agreement was amended because the cash flow, they needed the cash flow sooner. And so they said, we're going to bill you every quarter for the progress of the bills. And they've been struggling with their staff changes. They had a few retirements. Their finance person, they went through 2 or 3 of them, just have moved on to other roles. And so you now have some new people that I think are getting a lot better. So I think you'll see them more regular or regularly, or whatever the correct French grammar is. But so we're getting there. We're getting there. But yeah, those are big bills that hit us.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it until you have any questions, right?
Correct.
I know it's riveting information. I'm glad you guys are all still awake. So thank you.
Thanks for sticking it out with us.
Well done. Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Debbie. It's pretty complex, and especially thank you for sharing the indirect allocation model so people appreciate the level of work that you have to produce for the city. I appreciate it. We're moving on to the South Fork Dogfish Creek retrofit. And again, it's back to Charlie.
Indeed. Got a brief presentation here. So this is for a project, stormwater project called the South Fork Dogfish Creek Retrofit Project. It's something we applied a couple years ago for some ecology grant funding, and we were successful, which is really cool. And so that takes some time to get the grant through ecology and approved and signed and all of that. But we're at the point where we have the funds, they're approved, and we need to finish the design and then advertise for construction. We got the money for this project back sometime 2020, 2021. We did the 90% design, ecology funded it. Very common for ecology projects. You do the initial design and then they want you to come back and apply for construction later on. And that's exactly what we did for this project. This year we got $1.54 million to cover the first phase of this project. It's a pretty significant improvement centered around kind of Iverson, 7th, 8th, near Centennial Park. That's a basin that has some flooding, has some water quality issues. So we're targeting water quality improvements, some aesthetic improvements to the ditches or swales right in front of Centennial Park. And then hopefully a little bit of, actually there will be some improvements to flooding in the basin, but won't be a full fix, certainly.
I was going to make a joke, Charlie. Isn't this draining Mike Lund and Dan Wilson's old office?
Probably, maybe from right inside the office.
Will it help as far as Poulsbo Village? Will it like, do you think the impacts will be that far? Because I know that the shopping center has some issues with
it. This is all upstream of that, and it's actually a really challenging basin and area. We've done quite a bit of work there, and the creek is kind of the lowest point you can drain into, and the creek's very flat through there. So all these improvements are kind of upstream of the village. That being said, we are alleviating some of the flooding upstream, which if you have flooding upstream, it has issues downstream, but there still is the potential issue for some stuff downstream. That being said, I don't think we've had a flood in that area in the last couple of winters that I can recall. So it's been a little bit, but
this brings to mind a question actually for Mike, though you don't have to come to a mic necessarily, Mike. And that is the Wilderness Park drainage. That's considered part of South Fork now. And I'm told by the old timers that didn't exist until the 1950s with the building of the school complexes and runoff. Do you have any insight into that?
I know it's been there as long as I've been alive. I don't have a lot of input on that, but it has gotten a lot more. Everything up in that hillside kind of runs down that area, so it makes sense that when the school was probably the first big significant hardscape up there, that was the start of stuff. But
regardless of it's now considered fish bearing, so it's an immaterial point either way, right, Charlie?
Yeah, it's been mapped as
even if it's man-made.
Yeah, it's been mapped as a stream, identified as a stream, pretty far up there.
I can tell you from personal experience, water comes out of Rob Hill.
Oh, absolutely.
And flows down. So we have water coming out of the highest point in the city and flowing down. So all I have to do is stand in my backyard after really good rain when it's quiet and I can hear water trickling downward. So that whole area, even though it's the highest point, we still have water that makes its way to the top, comes out and flows back down. It's a really weird system.
Yeah. I got some interesting soils here. So other kind of notes, this project is in our stormwater CIP. We plan to do it this year. We got the funding for it, so we are doing it this year. And we're gonna address the 2 bioretention cells. I think this is on 7th Avenue, kind of right in front of Centennial Park. They're not the most aesthetic looking things currently, and so we're hoping to change that as part of this project. At the end, I'd like to see them look something a little bit more like what we put in over at West Nelson, a little bit cleaner, a little bit neater, some native plants in there. We're working with Pertite, the engineering company, to complete the 90% design or bring the plans the final 10%. And they did the initial design work for us, so they'll finish the design, help us put a bid package together, and then their construction contract also includes construction support once we bid the project and move into construction. So they'll be on call to help us if we have any technical questions or we need some additional inspection or services or whatever. Overall, their budget is about $104,000, a little bit over that, and it's within the overall budget. And so we're looking to approve their contracts. We can bring them on board to finish the design. As far as this project goes, we'd be looking to probably move towards construction in June or July of this year. So a couple months to wrap up the design, get through our ecology process, and then move into construction and have it completed this fall.
So the question is placing the consultant contract on our next city council meeting. Good to go?
Only thought you said start construction in June. Got no
Tentative.
concerns about kind of closing off or messing up those streets for Viking Fest when we have our biggest traffic in that area.
I mean, I think like advertising it in June, maybe not during construction. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just thinking, I know what the area looks like that weekend. So
Yeah, definitely.
So moving on to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda, if you guys are okay with
I'm
that.
fine with consent agenda.
Great. So I got one more, another consultant contract for you guys for another project. Lots of projects this year. Queuing it up. Did that backwards. Yeah. So we're calling this the well VFD upgrade project, and this is for our water wells throughout the city. So a little bit of background. VFD is variable frequency drives. It allows basically motor pump control via frequency and voltage input, as opposed to mechanical kind of throttling the pump. So it allows a lot of fine adjustments.
What we did with Lindvig tonight, right?
Yep. So all of our sewer lift stations are all on VFDs. Our wells are not currently on VFDs. They're more on either a soft start, or you just turn the power on and they ramp up 100% capacity right off the bat. And so this will really help operationally with our wells and give a lot better control. We can run our wells at lower rates. We can adjust the startup time to be softer, or kind of ramp down time. We can run them at higher rates for shorter periods or lower rates for longer periods. So some really cool operational things. We've got 5 wells within the city that we're looking to do this. All of the existing pump and motors are compatible with VFDs. It's just a matter of designing and sizing the VFDs to fit the motor. And we're relying on our consultant because it's very specialized work. And just to give you guys, this is a peek inside one of the panels at one of our wells. There's a lot going on there. We rely on a electrical consultant who knows what they're doing to help us make sure that we get the right control inputs and the right outputs. We did program this into our water CIP for this year. We've got a budget about $470,000. And the design budget from Parametrics is $73,000, which is within the overall budget for the project. So we're comfortable moving forward with them. Like I said, it's very technical work. We want to hire the right people to do it. And Parametrics has helped us with other electrical upgrades in the past very successfully. There's also 2 kind of other offshoots of this. One of them is electrical consolidation at the Lincoln number 1 well house. So that well house was built in the 60s, and it's been updated various times since then. And there's a lot of different electrical components that can be consolidated, and so we're kind of cleaning that up as part of this project. Makes sense to do. We're upgrading one piece of the thing, so we may as well upgrade everything ahead
Is
of
Lincoln number 2 already there?
Lincoln number 2 has a soft start, and it's been recently built. So that one is just a straight matter of replacing the soft start with a VFD. So it'll get a new panel and a new box. But Lincoln number 1, I'll just jump ahead here. So this is inside Lincoln well number 1, which has a lot of different, basically electrical panels. And I'd say almost all of these are unnecessary. It can be consolidated into one. And when there's an issue and you've got power running through 4 different boxes from different ages, it can just be you kind of tracking things down. And so this project, we took this opportunity to clean that up, which will be really good. And then the other part of it is adding a standby generator at the Big Valley well site. That's the one well site that doesn't have standby power. It has a manual transfer switch, so you can put a generator out there, but if it's inclement weather, there's trees down, power's out, it's hard to get to Lincoln or Big Valley because it's out on Big Valley. It's pretty far out there. So And yeah, I'd entertain any questions and otherwise be looking for this on the consent agenda as well for next week.
Are we comfortable consent agenda?
I am. I just, so I asked the question earlier with Lincoln 2 and having to move that being an unexpected project. This is not one of the projects that you discussed having to be impacted. No.
The only thing missing from that photo is a fish on the floor of the facility, Charlie.
Well, we wouldn't want that.
No, we wouldn't want that.
Cool. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, Charlie. Michael, we're going to move those forward to the business agenda for next week. That's what I meant. Getting late. Actually, we're doing well. It's just shortly after 7:30. I dare say we're approaching streamlining here.
Mayor?
Famous. Okay. I'm holding on. Don't want to
Mayor
jinx
Stern?
us.
Mayor Stern?
Mr. Newell, we didn't see a hand come up. Please address us.
Sorry, I just heard you say business agenda. Maybe I misheard it. These are going to consent?
Consent agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We're at that point of the evening where it'll be questions and concerns of the council. Then we're going to have continued public comment, any last mayor or council comments, and then I will give a time specific on the executive session, seeing where we end up. It's going to be 10 minutes specific to a time. So I'll start with Mr. Eckert.
Yeah, just looking at the next agenda. That's the next workshop. See, we have a lot of other items. I'm just a little concerned about full time for the workshop. It's just kind of just in general, looking at everything we have scheduled. And I was going to recommend for the exec session, we say 20 minutes because we have to transit and we have 2 remote members that have to get connected and everything. We tend to shave that time pretty close and then run up against it. So let's just say 20 minutes and give folks time to get connected. And
I'll turn to the city clerk. We're not going to have any problem with Mr. Newell or Mr. McVeigh being in the second floor conference room?
So you're not going to Zoom them tonight. City Administrator Gelder is going to be calling them. That's not going to take you too much time. So maybe you want to do 15 minutes because we're not going to have all that technical
okay, yeah, I just if we say 10, but then by the time we get up there, we've already
Take me
shooting
5
half of
minutes to
that.
get
So,
up there.
yeah, I just said let's
compromise at 15.
Okay, yeah, let's just not call ourselves short. But yeah, just looking at the agenda, just no concerns. Rob's not here, but about doing the full workshop with the items on the business agenda next time. I mean, most of them look like they're fairly short, but
It should be short if we're streamlined, but that would be the key.
well,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was just my only concern is we were trying to give these workshops our full and undivided attention, but we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like 5 or 6 other items to discuss first. So just a concern.
Britt or Michael have any concern, or Doug and Gary, as to what Mr. Eckert is referring to? Next week's agenda, of course.
You're referring to the housing workshop?
Yeah, we have, so 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we have 5 items on business and then the workshop for 2 hours. And I don't want to shortchange Heather and Nicole.
No.
By the end of that 2 hours because the business portion ran longer.
So my understanding is the mayor is the keeper of the agenda. Are you and Mr. Gelder able to work on maybe moving some of that around and thinking about time?
I will get together with Rob and we'll make sure that we're comfortable. How's
And
that?
then we have already agreed to a 4th meeting this month. So I don't know if any of that is non-timely and would be better moved to that meeting. I said, I just don't want to shortchange it because this workshop feels like the meaty one. We're really going to dig in and I want to give them our full and undivided
I agree. And don't forget, we have a special council on February 25, which is the continuation of the retreat.
Right.
Yes, we're
February
not going to have a
25,
full
5
meeting
p.m.
that night. It's
Right.
going to be total retreat. We're not going to be doing business consent on the 25th. We really want to give it the time needed so we can get through it.
Yeah, I just don't know how timely some of these business agenda items are if we can't wait or, I said, I just want looking at this, my biggest concern is that Nicole and Heather get the time they need from us, and we have the time to dig in like we need to. Because this was the promised detail workshop.
No, and
so-
it's incredibly important because it addresses the core responsibility of the council, which is policy and budget
Yeah.
and
And we
priority.
got to understand what we're deciding. We
Yeah.
don't want to make the wrong decision. So
Yeah, when I'm looking at the list, I mean, project acceptance tend to be quick, but I see at the end, Public Works facility scope of work estimated at 5 minutes seems a little ambitious. So.
Any input from Mr. Newell or Mr. McVeigh as to the concern? Next week's agenda?
I have no concern.
Okay.
No, I'm fine with the mayor and city administrator Gelder working it out.
Okay, we're at that portion again, council comments, and I think we can, at this point, effectively combine both questions and concerns and future mayor and council comments under item 12 for one go around. Britt, anything for the good of the order?
He'll do that
And,
after.
and we don't have any public present except Kathy Forsey. So, Rick, anything for further than the agenda? Michael, anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if, as part of the fourth meeting this month, we're going to have an opportunity to not just speak to already envisioned agenda items, but yet unvisioned agenda items. Because at the retreat, I felt like the things we could speak to were already pre-listed, and I have things I'd like to speak to that have not yet been listed.
That is the major object of the February 25 meeting is review the TIP, the CIP, the comp plan, what's in the batting order, what's anticipated out on the 6 years and 20 year, and then make sure we're capturing anything the council also sees as a priority for debate and seeing if it's going to move up that list.
Sounds good.
So that is the object. Gary, anything, comment?
Mayor.
Just with respect to that, if you could let Rob know ahead of time if there's additional items that you want added to that discussion, so he can incorporate that because he's working on the whole document.
Yeah,
That was directed at Michael.
if each of those plans are pretty meaty, if each one of those is an hour-long discussion, we're already at 3 hours. And, we talked about also doing a deep dive into finances again of
Right.
how we're going to spend some of the money that we've got coming in that we haven't allocated yet. We still haven't made a decision on if we're going to implement the new sales tax, the justice sales tax to lead to potentially the grant. So sounds like we're already at a 4-hour meeting for that meeting.
If it requires a follow-up to February 25, I assure you, we will do it because this is the core responsibility of the city council. We're trying to address it. Gary, anything, comment?
No comments.
Doug, any comment?
No comments. Let's go.
Okay, and I have no other comments, so I'm going to call one last time for public comment. If anyone wishes to speak. It does not look like anyone wishes to speak because there's only one. So we're going to move into, I'm going to call for the executive session from which we will adjourn. The executive session will be on the second floor conference room. Consideration of site selection or acquisition of real estate purchase under RCW 42.30.110 1B. We're going to take 15 minutes. It is now 7:45. We will go into that executive session and have automatic adjournment at 8 p.m.
Mayor, I move to approve out of executive session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we stand to executive session.
Motion for executive.